All right, let's just jump right into it. Welcome to this explainer where we are going to completely demystify the multi-layered evolution of telecommunications. Today, we're actually digging into Chapter 3, which is Part 3 of an incredibly comprehensive 15-part tutorial called Modern Telecommunications. This is brought to us by Virtualization Options LLC, a phenomenal technology research, education, and advisory organization based out of Colorado. We're going to trace this amazing journey from simple analog copper wires all the way to the AI-driven, cloud-native global networks of tomorrow. And look, if you're an IT professional understanding this evolutionary arc, it's not just history. It is absolutely essential context for every single complex system you're building and managing today. So here is our roadmap. We are going to trace this evolution across 6 distinct eras. 1, the foundations of analog connectivity. 2, the digital telephony revolution. 3, structuring data with OSI and IP. 4, mobile wireless and cellular. 5, convergence, cloud and software. And finally, 6, the intelligent, autonomous future. Let's get to it. Section 1, Foundations of Analog Connectivity, the Physical Reality. We have to start at the ground floor with Samuel Morse back in the 1840s. He figured out how to encode language into short and long electrical pulses over a copper wire. That simple yet revolutionary concept literally seeded everything that followed. But pretty quickly, engineers had a massive bottleneck. How do we share one single physical transmission medium among many simultaneous users? Well, first they came up with FDM, or frequency division multiplexing. This assigns each channel a unique frequency band. It's exactly how AM and FM broadcast radio stations coexist in the air without stepping on each other. Then things got a bit more advanced with TDM, time division multiplexing, which chops up a shared digital bit stream into repeating time slots. And finally, they evolved to statistical multiplexing. This one is demand-driven, dynamically allocating bandwidth based on who actually needs it right then. Now, it's important to note this relies heavily on overbooking. They sell way more capacity than physically exists, assuming we aren't all transmitting at the exact same millisecond. In fact, ISPs routinely oversubscribe by ratios of 20-1. But as we all experienced when global networks got massively congested during the COVID-19 pandemic, when those statistical assumptions break down, you definitely feel the limits of that gamble. All this early engineering culminated in the PSTN, the Public Switch Telephone Network, which is arguably the most successful engineered system in human history. These early networks relied entirely on what we call circuit switching. So when you placed a call, a dedicated, totally exclusive path was established from your phone all the way to the receiver. This was fantastic for guaranteed low-latency audio quality, but man, was it profoundly wasteful. The circuit stayed fully reserved even when nobody was speaking. It consumed peak capacity during every single silent pause in the conversation. It was kind of like renting an entire multi-lane highway just so you could drive a single car down it. Moving to Section 2, the digital telephony revolution. The mathematical magic. Okay, so to fix the problem of continuous noise accumulation on analog lines, where every single amplifier boosted the background hiss right alongside the voice, and to solve that massive waste of circuit switched capacity we just talked about, the industry desperately needed a digital translation. The true hero here is the Nyquist-Shannon sampling theorem. This mathematical magic proved that you could perfectly reconstruct a continuous analog signal if you just sample it at twice its highest frequency. Since human voice maxes out around 3,400 Hz, engineers decided on 8,000 samples per second. So, by taking those 8,000 voice samples a second and quantizing each one of them to 8 bits, engineers created the foundational 64,000 bits per second, or 64 kbps, G.711 voice channel. That specific math absolutely revolutionized the world, and it still underpins telecommunications networks globally today. The beauty of a 64 kbps digital bit stream is that you can regenerate it perfectly across endless distances, no more accumulating noise. But they still had to pack those channels together for efficiency. It's fascinating how different regions handled this. In North America, they decided to bundle 24 of these voice channels together to create T1 lines, pumping out a 1.544 megabits per second bit stream. Europe, on the other hand, went with the E1 standard, which bundles 30 voice channels plus 2 overhead channels at 2.048 megabits per second. Establishing this digital hierarchy practically eliminated noise and completely upended the economics of networking for the better. Next up, Section 3, Structuring Data, OSI and IP, the logical leap.
As these voice networks evolved to carry bursty computer data and as data volume just absolutely exploded, we had to move up the stack. We desperately needed a standardized way to organize this massive digital flow. Enter the 1984 OSI reference model. This is our essential map. It takes the insanely complex problem of network communication and breaks it down into distinct logical layers. At layer 1, the physical layer, you have raw electrical voltage or light traveling over cables. Layer 2 structures that raw energy into Ethernet frames with MAC addresses for node-to-node delivery. Then we step up to layer 3, where IP packets get routed end-to-end across internetworks. Finally, at layer 4, the data is transported to your actual applications using protocols like TCP, which ensures reliable air-tech delivery, or UDP, which skips all those delivery guarantees in favor of blazing fast real-time transmission. This model gave the entire industry a universal vocabulary. Now, diving deeper into that layered approach brings us to layer 3, IP addressing. We really need to contrast the totally exhausted 32-bit IPv4 system with the massive 128-bit IPv6 space. So IPv4 gave us about 4.3 billion addresses, which sounded like a lot until we rapidly ran out of them. To cope, we used NAT, or Network Address Translation, which essentially let thousands of private devices hide behind and share a single public IP. But honestly, NAT kind of broke the end-to-end transparency of the internet. To fix this for good, IPv6 expands the address space to 340 undecillion addresses. That is a truly unfathomable number. And it became a strict necessity with the modern explosion of IoT devices. Because ideally, every single smart bulb, sensor, and thermostat needs its own globally routable address without relying on clunky NAT workarounds. All right, section 4, mobile wireless and cellular, the untethering. So, having conquered copper and fiber optic lines on the ground, the next massive hurdle for the industry was cutting the physical tethers. We had to leap into the air. The paradigm shifts across these wireless generations are just wild. We went from 1G's fully analog networks in the 1980s, where anyone with a basic radio scanner could literally eavesdrop on your car phone, to 2G, which finally brought digital modulation and basic SMS text messaging. 3G pushed us across the broadband threshold, giving us a taste of true mobile internet. But the absolute game changer was 4G LTE. 4G completely threw legacy circuit switching out the window in favor of an all-IP architecture. By delivering massive speeds and sub-50 millisecond latency, it made streaming HD video and running cloud-dependent apps on our smartphones an everyday reality. But what actually makes all of that wireless evolution scalable? I mean, radio spectrum is severely limited. The foundational insight here is the cellular concept itself. By dividing massive coverage areas into smaller geographical cells, networks can use a specific portion of the available radio spectrum in one cell, and then, here's the trick, reuse those exact same frequencies in other non-adjacent cells. It is a brilliant geometry trick that prevents interference and allows telecom carriers to serve billions of simultaneous users with a strictly finite amount of physical radio spectrum. Which brings us to section 5, convergence, cloud, and software, the virtual future. We've now reached the modern era, where telecom hardware is physically dissolving into software and completely merging with cloud computing. This convergence really kicked off with voice over IP, or VoIP, which was a massive, massive disruption. Remember our wasteful circuit-switched calls? Well, VoIP fixes that. It digitizes the voice, compresses it using a codec, packetizes that data into a stream of UDP datagrams, and transmits it across a shared IP network, keeping latency under 150 milliseconds so humans don't talk over each other. It turned a traditional, dedicated phone call into just another packetized data application, sharing the exact same infrastructure you use to send emails or browse the web. The cost savings were astronomical. Now, to manage this huge IP transition, network operators adopted soft switches. This was a stroke of genius. A soft switch separates the brains from the brawn. It takes the call signaling and control software and runs it on standard, off-the-shelf commodity servers, while the heavy lifting, the actual hardware media processing, is handled separately by media gateways. This architectural separation meant carriers could finally scale their call control software completely independently from their raw hardware media capacity. That software separation naturally evolved into full-blown cloud convergence. Today, telecommunications and cloud computing deeply intersect. Data center orchestration is now a core telecom skill.
The physical, bespoke, super expensive routers and switches of the past are being aggressively replaced by virtualized network functions, or VNFs, and cloud-native network functions. The modern telecom network is no longer a collection of rigid hardware boxes. It is essentially becoming a massive, highly distributed software application running in the cloud.
Finally, Section 6, the Intelligent Autonomous Future, AI-Operated Networks.
So let's look at the ultimate destination of this journey. Networks that are so incredibly complex, they literally have to manage themselves. We're crossing a critical threshold where previous generations of networks, the ones managed by human operators clicking around in dashboard tools, are giving way to fully autonomous networks. And this isn't some distant sci-fi dream. AI is currently being standardized as a fundamental component of the telecom protocol stack. These AI-operated networks will be able to perceive their own states, reason about optimal configurations, and execute complex management actions, all without human intervention. This is an absolute necessity if we want to support massive machine-type communications, or MMTC. We're talking about billions of low-power IoT devices constantly connecting in wildly diverse, unpredictable patterns that human operators simply cannot manually orchestrate anymore.
So I want to leave you with this provocative thought right from Chapter 3 of Virtualization Options LLC's incredible tutorial. As telecommunications tech evolves faster than any foundational education can keep up with, and as physical hardware completely dissolves into software while AI takes over managing the stack, are you ready to think in systems? The highest value in IT now belongs to the professionals who understand how radio physics, software architecture, and AI operations seamlessly interact across these autonomous networks of tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.